Yeah, no, that has
I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Stenzel, please call the roll.
Trustee Koss?
Here.
Trustee Marshowska?
Here.
Trustee Gallegos?
Here.
Trustee Mateo? Here. Trustee Evans? Here. Manager Francis? Here. Also present, Clerk Stenzel.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. President's report. First, I would like to, not on the agenda, but just part of my report, Manager Francis and staff and I have met recently with Williams Architects. As you will recall, the board had directed staff to reach out to them to prepare plans for a request for proposal for our property at Harlem and Burlington. And they have developed some plans. I'm excited about what they're doing. These are just simply promotional materials to try to encourage developers to be interested in our property. And I wanted to send that to the Economic Development Commission first, unless there's any concerns from the trustees about that. Nope. So we will do that, and then it'll come to the village board in November sometime, I think. On the agenda, under President's report, we have an update regarding the Berwyn-Riverside Railroad Community Crossing study. We'll start with Director Siren.
Yes. Thank you, President Pollack. Tom Murtha with CMAP will be presenting an update on this project. Two of the village's railroad crossings, one at Delaplane Road and one at Harlem Avenue, are included in the study area. And this is just a study of possibilities to improve those intersections. There's no financial implication or further plans for it at this point. Mr. Murtha?
Thank you very much, Ann. I was here back in 2019, I believe, to introduce our potential study at that time to the village. We heard support for going forward with a study, and we are engaged in that effort right now. Again, we don't have at this point a kind of a live proposal for the village to consider. At this point, I am updating the board with regard to the process to date and the next few steps that we anticipate going through. So with me today, I have some of our consultants, Marie Glynn and Christine Nort both from Jacobs. So when I can't answer a question, I will punt it to my consultants. So let's see. Also working with us on the study is the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways. If we arrive at one or more solutions that we can carry forward to engineering, the county has agreed to carry those projects forward through the engineering process and potentially to the construction phase. We don't know at this point whether there will be a study to carry forward. Part of what we're trying to do is get to a series of go, no-go points with regard to, well, do we actually have a proposal to carry forward to engineering? That's really the goal of this process. We're trying to do it at a reasonable cost. If we go to engineering, that's probably tens of millions of dollars for a project this size. So we are not prepared to do that until we know, again, that we want to move forward. So our study is regarding the crossings of the BNSF between Ridgeland Avenue in Berwyn and Delaplane Road here in Riverside. We've completed part one of our two-part study. Part one, we developed a stakeholder engagement plan. We developed what we call a transportation system performance report, and developed what we call a purpose and need. And the purpose and need was federally coordinated to kind of be able to carry forward into the engineering process. And the purpose and need that we developed was to improve vehicle travel, improve vehicle travel time reliability, safety, and mobility for motorists, emergency vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists across the BNSF corridor, resulting from extended gate closures at highway rail grade crossings in the study area. Our study area is basically bounded by those crossings that I mentioned, and then plus another, I think, quarter mile on each side to accommodate the approaches. So that was the result of phase one. We are now in part two of the process. And in part two, we develop a range of alternatives. That is, we are soliciting ideas from our consultants, from stakeholders, from the public, to basically any idea that can address that purpose and need we are interested in hearing about. And so we're identifying the range of alternatives and also the evaluation criteria that we would use to rank those alternatives from number one down to the end. So we have some ideas with regard to the evaluation criteria, and of course we have ideas with regard to the alternatives. But again, what we're doing basically for the last month and a half, and then for the next month through October, is really trying to get some outreach in place so that we have basically as much input as we can with regard to those activities. And I'll talk about that outreach activity in just a minute. But after after the outreach period closes, we will then go quiet for a while. Well, we'll do a couple things. We are going to be meeting with what we call the Community Advisory Group and our Project Study Group to go over the results of our outreach. And then once we have closure on what that input means, then we'll proceed to basically the evaluation period. We'll be quiet for quite a while into probably the early or mid part of next year, and then come up with a short list of the best alternatives maybe, and then bring those out for public input and also stakeholder input. So resulting from that, we'll have to have a public meeting. We have to have, again, a lot of input, talking to a lot of people with regard to that short list. From that short list, we may identify one or more alternatives to carry forward into engineering. We'll prepare a report to be reviewed by the Federal Highway Administration and our partners at IDOT, and then we'll be done by November 30th of next year. Now, again, we're engaged in outreach. We've been meeting with school districts, the hospitals, the municipal staff, and we have, actually at the suggestion of village staff, used the Postal Service Every Door direct mail service to reach 5,000 addresses in the city of Berwyn and the village of Riverside. With that effort, we are asking people to complete a survey. Again, we have thousands of people that we have tried to reach out to. We have about 15, let's see, I think about 1,800 visits to our website and about 500 survey responses to date. The survey will close at the end of this month. And let's see, I think that's about where we are. We are interested in any and all ideas with regard to improvements, and hope to hear from everybody we can with regard to some of the prioritization questions that we've got. So thank you very much. I hope that kind of gives a good indication of where we are and where the study is going.
Thank you, Mr. Murtha. Any comments, questions from trustees? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
The community advisory group includes village staff, EDC, preservation, et cetera. So at some point, who will be reaching out to the business owners on Harlem? Is that CMAP? Is that our community advisory group?
So we had included the business owners in the direct mailing that we've got. So each of them should have, within the business area, should have received a postcard. When we did the last public meeting, I went door to door, trying to inform people of the study. We could do that again if the village thinks it's necessary. We hadn't planned on doing that because, again, we did the mailing. But again, I would be interested in the feedback from Siren with regard to whether we should engage in that. So
I was thinking more post-survey when things might be a little bit more concrete and there's something to talk to the business owners about.
yeah. So it seems to me that when we're looking for something concrete, the time to do that would be after the evaluation period.
Thank you.
So that would be next spring. So let's keep that in mind. I mean, that's essentially what we did with the purpose of need. When we were ready for a public meeting, I was out. So let's plan on that for the next phase of outreach.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. What was the feedback you got when you went door to door to those businesses?
Well, at the time, we heard a lot of sentiment about the need for an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
But again, because we didn't have a concrete proposal, there was always the question of, well, what does this mean? And we can't answer that question now. We couldn't at that point. When we are ready with the short list, I think that would be a better point to engage them, and then they could meaningfully respond to what we're proposing. And that's the planning is two things: figuring out what you want and then how to do it. The figuring out what you want is often too vague for somebody trying to make money to understand. When we have the how we're actually going to accomplish it, that's when they can figure out what it means.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any public comments on this item? No. Continuing, thank you, Mr. Murtha, for attending. Thank you to the consultants for attending. We appreciate it very much. Upcoming meeting schedules for the village. On October 6th, the Riverside TV Commission has their regular meeting at the Village Hall at 6:30 p.m. Also on October 6th, Sesquicentennial Ad Hoc Committee Special Meeting, Village Hall, 7 p.m. October 8th, Economic Development Commission Special Meeting, Village Hall, 6:30 p.m. October 9th, Preservation Commission regular meeting, Village Hall, 6:30 p.m. October 14th, Landscape Advisory Commission regular meeting, Village Hall, 6:30 p.m. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 16th, Village Hall, 6:30 p.m. That concludes my president's report. Are there any trustee reports this evening? There are none. Manager Francis.
Thank you. I just have one item to report this evening. I'm excited to announce that West Central Consolidated Communications, also known as WC3, which is the Village's dispatch center, has hired a new executive director. His name is Thomas Perfect, and he will begin at the center on October 20th, 2025. Mr. Perfect brings more than 22 years of experience in public safety and emergency communications. He has worked and served in multiple roles, most recently as the 911 director for the city of Waukegan, and previously held a decade of leadership positions with the village of Glenview. Interesting note, early in his career, he worked as a 911 dispatcher for both the village of Riverside and the village of LaGrange. Another interesting note is our interim director, who is our interim director at WC3, who is the retired deputy police chief of Riverside, Bill Gutchek, actually hired Mr. Perfect when he had first started his career in dispatching. So it's kind of a full circle moment. It's very exciting. Mr. Gutchek will stay on board for approximately a month to help with that transition. We're really excited to have the full-time director, and we're very grateful for Mr. Gutchek for stepping in, answering the call when I called, and agreeing to take on that role on an interim basis. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Public comments, non-agenda items. If there is anyone in the public who would like to comment on a non-agenda items, noting that comments for items on the agenda may be made when that item is brought up. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on non-agenda items? There are none. Consent agenda. Clerk Stenzel, please read the consent agenda.
Approve voucher list of bills, October 2nd, 2025. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, September 18th, 2025. Review and file Board and Commission minutes. Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes, July 23rd, 2025. Parks and Recreation Board regular meeting minutes, August 25th, 2025. A resolution amending the Village of Riverside Employee Manual, Section 3.35, relative to education/training. An ordinance amending the Village Code relative to liquor license, and amending a fee schedule for the Village of Riverside, a resolution authorizing the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside.
Do any of these items need to be removed? If not, someone like to make a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Clerk Stenzel, please call the roll.
Trustee Cost?
Aye.
Trustee Marshallska? Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Department, board, and commission reports. Does anyone have a department, board, or commission report this evening? There are none. We'll move on to pending business. Riverside Historical Commission Land Acknowledgement Statement. Management Analyst Split will present this.
Good evening. I'm Constance Guardi.
Connie, could you let our staff start it off, please?
sorry.
Thank you. We'll get to.
You're a little eager.
I was just going to say, as the staff liaison, we're lucky enough to have two commission members who helped work on this, craft this statement. So I'll leave it to Connie Guardi.
Oh, wow. Anyway, good evening. I am here. I'm Constance Guardi. I live at 275 Gage Road. I know you used to require that. But anyway, I'm here to introduce my fellow commissioner. Kathy Jean Maloney was appointed to the Riverside Historical Commission about maybe 3 months ago. It's in your minutes, but when she came to our first meeting as a new commissioner, she engaged, of course, right away. She is such a lovely and skilled person. And we were discussing the request that you made to us about this important issue. And we were discussing, and she said, and we needed research, and she said, oh, I can do that. And at our next our last meeting in September, she came and had this, what she will present to you. And so I'm just here to introduce my fellow commissioner, Kathy G. Malone.
Thanks, Connie. Thanks for having us tonight. I think it's really great that this group has initiated this goal of having a land acknowledgement statement. I think a lot of times we, and myself for sure, tend to think of only the Olmsted period, which is, of course, what we're landmarked for. But, of course, there was thousands of years before then where other peoples were here in Riverside, so it's important to acknowledge that. You have the draft in your packet. A number of commissioners worked on researching it. I simply compiled and put the thing together. Our goal in putting it together like this is to have a two-part statement, if you will, and explanation. And the reason for that is we wanted the statement to be clear and limited, and we wanted the explanatory notes, which hopefully we can put on the website along with the statement, to have the detail behind it. And the rationale on that is kind of twofold. First of all, what we discovered was that this area is really in flux, this whole area of study. And when you start researching and you start looking at the contemporary literature about it, you start talking to people, there's a lot of changes afoot. There's a lot of new nomenclature that's being used, both by the indigenous peoples themselves, by academics, by a number of people who are still learning about this as a cultural effort. And so because of that flux and dynamic nature of it, we wanted to keep the statement simple and the rationale and the explanatory notes more detailed so that they could be updated on an ongoing basis. It's not unusual. When I spoke to the director of the Indigenous Peoples, my Native American, she has a very long title, group at Northwestern, for example, they view their land acknowledgement statement as evergreen, and they are always in the process of updating it. And the feedback that we got from talking to people like her, as well as talking to the woman who is in charge of the Indigenous Peoples of Chicago website within a website of the Newberry Library, also, suggest being thoughtful about how and when you use the statement so that it doesn't become rote, so that it becomes something that you can really live by. And so I'll just read you the statement, and then all the explanatory notes you can certainly see in the packet. But the statement says, "We sincerely acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather. We hope to honor their legacy by living in harmony with and protecting green spaces, the river, and the beneficial flora and fauna therein." And so there are two parts to that. There's the actual acknowledgement that we know that we didn't just arrive on this land and it was ours to start with, and Frederick Law Olmsted, created a whole world that was, never here before, but also a commitment to do something about it. And I think this commitment is consistent with what we do and how our various commissions are set up to honor the green space and to honor that to which we've been entrusted. What else can I tell you? I guess I'll leave it open to questions at this point.
Thank you, Kathy. Trustees, well, first, anyone in the public wishing to address the board on this item? None. Trustees, this is a new item on the agenda. Any questions, comments? Trustee Evans?
I think it's a beautiful statement, and I thank you very much for the research that you put into it.
Thank you. On behalf of my
Trustee
group.
Costs?
I would like to move that we table adopting the statement until we can get more clarity on some of the pieces of this.
Thank you. Would you like to put that, is that a motion?
Yes, I
Yes.
move to table it.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion on the motion.
I think it would be nice to understand what aspects you think need additional clarification. I was struck when I read this by how thoughtful and thorough the research had been, given the transient and changing nature of the Chicago Portage and all the people that traveled through this area before. I think the statement does an excellent job of honoring that, and I do agree with something that Ms. Maloney alluded to earlier, in that it should be published with the explanatory notes, because I think that taken together, people who read the statement can then really understand how thoughtful and serious this process was. I think it's fitting to do something like this in our sesquicentennial year, and if there are specific questions that you have about it, it would be great to articulate those now so we know what you're talking about.
So this is something that's near and dear to my heart, land acknowledgements. This is actually one of my strategic goals for the board. And I feel very strongly that a important component of any land acknowledgement is the reconciliatory nature of it. The acknowledgement that this land belonged to somebody prior to European people coming into the area, and that the purpose of a land acknowledgement is to say that that land was taken from them and the native peoples were removed from the land. That there needs to be, that's the purpose of an acknowledgement to me, is to point out the fact that there were people living here prior to Olmsted, prior to European settlement, prior to other, people coming from all over, and that we need to acknowledge the fact that they were forced off their land from where they were living.
I don't disagree.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean,
So
feel
maybe
free,
more
I appreciate
teeth?
all the hard work that went into this, but that is a good point. I like to
Any thoughts on that?
have that thought into it.
I am not a scholar of Native American studies at all. Again, I would point to the dynamic nature of study under this, because prior to probably the tribes that you are thinking about that I list through there were other peoples that were removed from this land. So, back to the Bronze Age is the best that we can figure. So you get into this responsibility issue, and I think we say that it belonged to other people. And looking at other Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather. So I have seen other statements where, number one, they list all the different tribes, and you kind of have to remember that sometimes people are going to be saying this orally, and they have problems pronouncing the different tribe names. If you look at the Oak Park statement, that might be closer to what you're talking about. It depends upon how, again, if you say something like that, you need to be able to have all the research behind that, in my opinion. So, but, you know, you
Thank
can
you,
see what we
Kathy.
came through.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to table. It's obvious that everybody's in agreement with the spirit of this, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just more a question of how far, what exactly we want to say. And given that, I think we should table it to let us all work on it a little bit, think about it some more. So we're not going to figure it out. It's not a thing we can figure out discussing at a board meeting. Our staff can help us with that. Maybe we'll come up with, maybe I could ask trustees to submit all, modifications or edits of this, and then we can come back and discuss that some more at a later date.
Can I point out one more thing?
Sure.
It's just, we modeled the simplicity of the statement, particularly the first line, after the National American Indian Museum, which is I'm sure you've all been there. It's a Smithsonian museum on the mall. And this is almost exactly how their first statement goes. They do not go into a lot of detail like that. So just a caution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unless there are any other comments or questions, I would like to ask Clerk Stenzel to call the roll on tabling it.
So just to clarify, if we vote yes, we are voting yes to table.
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Cost?
Aye.
Trustee Markowska?
Aye.
Trustee Galagos?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
This will be tabled. We'll certainly let LAC know when this comes back to our agenda, and I'm sure there'll be more.
Historic.
It's a historic.
I'm sorry.
I was afraid you were going to.
Because
That's why I introduced you.
Because you've seen me do it before, right. Okay, thank you. Historical Commission, yes.
It's an honest mistake. She's good, I'm looking.
Next, under pending business, discussion regarding the Des Plaines River Trail South Extension. Director Simon.
Thank you. I have the requests for board direction that are listed here at the end of the agenda materials for this item. The Des Plaines River Trail South Extension is a long-planned project to close a gap in the Des Plaines River Trail, which is a regional trail. As the project is reaching the conclusion of Phase 1 engineering, staff is requesting the board's direction on 3 areas, which are covered by these questions: the location, width, and material of a path along Wabansie Road, whether the village would be willing to contribute $152,600 or 20% of the project cost for the 31st Street connection portion of the project, and generally, does the village want to continue to be part of the discussion of this project? So just a little bit of background. In December 2019, the board approved an IGA for this project, which was to do Phase 1 engineering. The board committed to contributing $34,773 for that, but hasn't contributed to any additional funding for the project. And Brookfield is managing this project, which again is wrapping up Phase 1. So just to take a look at the location of this project, this is the 31st Street connector that we'll discuss later. You can see the grade area here are Brookfield's limits and North Riverside, and here's Riverside's limits. So you can see this runs through Forest Preserve owned land, and then the zoo, and then the area here is on village-owned property, and then connects to, this would be a proposed asphalt pathway that doesn't exist. Then we connect to an existing pathway running down First Avenue. The pathway continues here running by the high school, down this existing pathway, all the way to Wabansie. At this point, the existing pathway on First Avenue ends, and so the pathway would jog over along Wabansie Road, and then here it would be located within, I know it looks like it's down a road here, but this is actually Forest Preserve owned property. So all of this is Forest Preserve owned property. This portion of the path would be located within that property. The proposed location from the project was to locate this pathway along Wabansie in the village owned right of way. There's an existing 5-foot wide exposed aggregate concrete pathway there that would be replaced as proposed. The path would then continue down First Avenue, where it connects with Ogden, and then again, a large portion of this was is Forest Preserve owned property. So cut through here to connect to an area in Lyons. So when staff reviewed the exact location of the pathway earlier this year and met with staff from Seorba on site to discuss this, Director Tab noted that the existing pathway along Wabansie, which is again a 5-foot exposed aggregate concrete pathway, would be replaced with a 10-foot wide asphalt pathway. And he noted that that would be contrary to the village's policy of having public pathways be exposed aggregate. He also expressed concern about the utility lines that run under that pathway. There are water lines there. If those water lines broke, there would be question about who'd be responsible for removing the pathway, replacing it as part of that work. There's also just questions about general maintenance of the pathway, who would be responsible for that pathway. As an alternative, during those discussions, during that site visit and then subsequent discussions of the project, village staff recommended actually using, again, that forest preserve-owned property, which is right nearby, instead of within the village-owned property. You can see the property line here, and that's dashed in white. There are some opportunities to kind of weave in and out of the trees in this area. And headed further down Wabansie here, this is where the forest preserve property picks up. And so the village-owned pathway would end here, and this would be forest preserve-owned property, and that would connect with the intended location of the pathway there. And you can see a couple photos of the existing pathway on Wabansie there, just for reference. So the intention is to fund this project, the construction of the project with grants. Village Manager Francis met with Brookfield's village manager to discuss the status of the project and the future viability of the project if funding cannot be secured for that 31st Street extension. And if you'll remember from when we looked at that, there were portions of it in Brookfield and then a portion in Riverside. Based on the 20% share of Riverside, that would be Riverside's share of the proposed cost. That includes engineering and construction costs. That's total costs. And there's a further breakdown in the packet.
Just one minor correction. That's 20% for, so you have your total cost, the 20% where it has Brookfield in parentheses.
Yes.
Those are Brookfield's 20% costs.
I apologize. That could have been further clarified in that chart. I apologize.
And then Gulfview Avenue to First, the 152,600 would be our portion, if grant funding was available for that 80% portion.
Thank you for clarifying. I apologize for the providing a misleading slide. So our questions for the board, again, kind of broken down into the Wabansie Road path, the 31st Street connector, and then generally, does the village want to continue being part of the discussion? And I'll be happy to go over those in any order you like.
I would like to take that last one first, the big, broader question of whether we continue to participate in this discussion. I was discussing this with Manager Francis today, and we don't know what the overall financial commitment would be to the village. But if you'll go back to the maps, please. So that, yeah, we could start there. So we have an estimated number of what it would cost the village to do the 31st Street part, $150,000 plus. Mm-hmm. And so that's just that small section there between Gulf and First Avenue. So going south end, that's already there all the way to Forest. But then south of Forest is just a 5-foot sidewalk. So as it stands now, we would have to participate in that cost of widening that from Forest to Wabansie, which I've got to believe is much, much more than $150,000. Then we would also be expected to participate in the cost of the part on Wabansie Road. So I don't know what that means, but given the $150,000 for that shorter section, I'm assuming we're talking $750,000 or more. Manager Francis?
I was able to locate, now granted, this is late 2022 number, so a lot has changed over the past 3 years, but what they were estimating for our First Avenue contribution was $365,000. That's in addition to the $150,000+ for just the 31st Street, but that's all contingent on different grant funding.
And that does not include Wabansie, right?
I believe it is inclusive, but I don't have, they didn't break it out. It was a summary from a meeting back in 2022, early '23.
So we're looking at a minimum of a $500,000 commitment from the village to proceed with this. So I would like to get trustees' feedback on that. You know, there's certainly some benefit to the village, but it seems like the real benefit is more regional as opposed to local. You know, my personal opinion is that given that it's a more regional, that it should be a regional cost, either through the county or the state. And, you know, can we prioritize $500,000, and I got to believe it's going to be closer to $750,000. Can we prioritize that over all the other infrastructure projects we have going? And so I would like to start with that discussion, because depending on the outcome of that, the other factors may be more or less relevant.
Well, just, this is all contingent on grant funding, you said. So nobody does any of the project unless there's a giant grant.
Right.
So, just generally speaking, I mean, having intersuburban connectivity is very important. Our bike infrastructure in this western suburban area is not ideal. It doesn't, you know, our residents don't really have easy, safe access to other communities by bike. You know, my husband takes a different route altogether, but I fear for his life, you know, when he bike commutes over to First Avenue in Melrose Park and Fifth Avenue, those areas. It's fast, it's furious, there are no alternatives. So I think, you know, it doesn't hurt us to be part of an ongoing discussion. If the funding doesn't come through, you know, would I say we should prioritize this over other things that are important to the village? No. But I think we should continue to be part of the discussion.
So just to clarify, you're saying continue to be part of the discussion, but not necessarily make a financial commitment at this time? Or we need to revisit before we make a financial commitment?
We would not make a financial commitment unless the grant money was there.
Okay. Because I would agree that it would be great to continue to be part of the discussions, but I'm not comfortable at this time making a financial commitment to the project. I think, like, for all the reasons you said, I think the connectivity, I mean, I personally, as somebody who likes to bike on trails, would rather it go through the forest than go on Wabansie. It's my personal opinion. But I think being part of the discussion is also important when we talk about transportation and bike safety and things like that, that have been topics of discussion for our village. But, so saying just we're going to be part of the discussions is fine with me. Saying we're making any sort of financial commitment at this point, I'm not comfortable with that.
Others?
So at the time, there were 5 government groups that joined the IGA, and I remember those discussions. It was a regional impact, it was a safety impact, perhaps even drawing people into our CBD when they get off the path. I'm interested in to what extent those 5 agencies, 5 governments are still interested and involved.
There's been minimal involvement from Lions. We haven't heard much from them, and LaGrange is not involved at this point. So the Village of Riverside and Brookfield are involved, Cook County Forest Preserves, and Cook County.
And right now, as it stands, Brookfield is going to be having a similar conversation because while being part of the conversations is important, there's a lot of staff time that has been allocated over the years to these different discussions. You know, one of the things that has come up is we started on this journey with Brookfield because there was the importance of making that connectivity and creating that path along 31st Street and connecting to the First Avenue.
Could you try again?
One more time, Jessica.
And so, you know, the importance of that piece. And then Brookfield has been told unofficially that perhaps the county would not help offset some of those costs of 31st Street. And so that's why the manager from Brookfield reached out and said, you know, what is the plan? Because, you know, they were looking at it, creating that connection to that little piece along 31st that would ultimately lie in Riverside. But really, they could do, if they were going to do something on their own, their workaround would be to make that connection to Gulfview, and then they can connect directly to the other path. And so we're in this space of we want to collaborate, and we also want to be good regionally, but also, as President Pollock stated, this is a regional project. And so Cook County and Cook County Forest Preserve, there is an inherent interest, invested interest, for them to do these different projects. And so that is, I don't want to speak for Brookfield, but I believe that their position is that they should be contributing because we're actually adding to the safety within their boundaries. We're adding a benefit of both recreation and transportation. So you're not only hitting the Forest Preserve, but you're also hitting their Department of Transportation and Highways. And so I'm working to coordinate a meeting with Cook County to talk about that further, because absent additional funding, you saw Brookfield's number, it's over $1 million for 31st Street. And Brookfield has needs similar to us of all of those different costs. And so then it becomes an evaluation of what does that mean? Like, we want to bring these different things to the region, but it shouldn't be everything put upon the local entities. And so that has been the conversation. Those have been more of the focused discussions, and really we want that type of feedback from the board so that we can turn around and tell the county this is where our community stands on this project. We feel it's important. However, we don't have the financial wherewithal to pivot and pay $750,000, and potentially by the time it's actually built, it could be $1 million, depending on inflation and everything.
Yeah, I'm not ready to make that financial commitment either.
Well, just to be clear, when we're talking $500,000, $750,000, or $1 million, that's assuming we get grants. Obviously, if we don't get grants, it's dead on arrival, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even at that, I question, you know, who should be, I love the project. I definitely want the project, but, you know, is the cost being shared appropriately? And my initial reaction is it's not. It should be more of a regional burden. So is that a consensus from the board, at least on that topic?
Well, would Manager Francis then have the discussion with the county about county funding?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then, should we table all of this until following that discussion?
We can.
Well, it's just a discussion, there's no vote
Yeah.
being asked.
So she's asking for direction, all right, on what you want us to?
Yes, as long as I have consensus and direction, then I can follow up with Brookfield about what the board's feedback has been, just of being a partner on this. Because we're gonna, if they've decided that they no longer want to move forward, then it's, perhaps the decision has been made for all of us regionally, too.
And we're the connection to Lions, right? And if they're not coming to the table on this, then what's the point of us being
You know, I
there in the
know it's a
middle?
goal of the county, both of the Forest Preserve and of the county itself, is to create that connectivity from north to going south. And they've made, if you look at any of their interactive maps, they've made a lot of progress up north, but there's a lot of gaps and pieces, to Trustee Marshazka's point, of creating that connectivity, of being able to travel south on a path in the West Cook area.
Well, I personally would like you to explore the issue with the county about whether they would be willing to provide, you know, a greater portion of the funding for such an initiative. And if so, then we would, you know, be interested in participating in discussions, but I think we all kind of agree that the price tag that is being asked of the local communities here is pretty high. Yeah.
So, if I may, just to clarify, then, that our expectation would be that they would be contributing a portion of that 20%. The 80% would either be federal or state funds through different other grant opportunities that are being explored, but that our expectation would be that they would be looking to share in that 20% cost.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Or someone would. Maybe the state throws in more money, I don't know, but yeah, it's a regional benefit. Yeah, I'd say, I hate to throw numbers at it, but 90% or whatever, more than 80% of the benefit goes to the region. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
So, is that sufficient direction?
I believe so, and then based on my discussions with the county and Brookfield, I'll bring back a report to the board, and then
Great.
we can revisit those other items.
Very good, thank you. New business, we have Director Zavala, announcement of public hearing for 2025 tax levy ordinance.
Thank you. Good evening. The state of Illinois Truth in Taxation Law requires that not less than 20 days prior to any taxing body adopting its property tax levies, it must determine how many dollars in aggregate property tax extensions will be necessary. The hearing to be held on October 16, 2025 is for the 2025 tax levy that will be collected in 2026 and beyond. The hearing will take place at 6:30 p.m. in this room 4 of Village Hall before the regularly scheduled board meeting. Notice will also be published in next week's edition of the Landmark newspaper. On the screen is the budget timeline proposed process. We'll have the hearing, and then on 11/6/2025, we'll have the budget hearing and resolution of estimated tax levy. And 12/4 will be the finale, where we will adopt the budget and tax levy ordinance and the adoption of the actual budget document and budget in brief. Let's just give you a heads up of all the fun we have planned ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no action needed.
Any questions or comments from the
No.
board? Any public comments on this item? There are none. Well, we do not have a need for an executive session this evening, so I would ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.